This is Lewis Hart for Boxing Social in association with Empire Fight Store and William Hill. Delighted to today be joined on a fine Friday morning with Gareth A Davies. First of all, mate, in a sort of quiet weekend of boxing, how's things been, mate?
Very good, thank you. Just recovering after being across two, maybe three events last weekend and actually visiting two of them. Belfast last week in the build-up, bit of TV work, and then radio on Saturday night for Bournemouth, and then reassessing it all on Sunday. Just getting ready for Josh Taylor and Teo Lopez in New York next week with watching the heavyweight stuff unfolding again, or maybe just folding rather than unfolding.
100%, definitely. We'll get onto that, but we'll start off with, it's a quiet weekend this weekend, but last weekend was an extremely busy one, another busy one for you. We saw two new world champions. One man retained his world title. First of all, sort of start off with a simple question: where you look at these three fights, what was the biggest talking point from those three fights? Would you say which one?
Well,
was
the
the
biggest. Well, the thing is, Lewis, going into it, the biggest talking point was one can never remember three world title fights in three different locations on the same night in the UK. So that can't happen again. It was ludicrous. It splits the fans. It splits the viewers. And I did a piece in the Telegraph talking to all three promoters. They all had their reasons. Frank Warren said it was crazy. Eddie Hearn said there was a backlog. Ben Shalom said Bournemouth was only available that weekend. I mean, I was down in balmy Bournemouth, and I think that was probably the biggest talking point of the weekend. The smash and grab tactics of Lawrence Okolie finally got the worst of him, if you like, against Chris Billam-Smith, who obviously knew him from hundreds of rounds of sparring. And CBS and Shane McGuigan exploited that, and they exploited that to the full. At the time, being involved with the radio commentary, working on it live, I think might have been blown away a little bit by the weirdness of the fight. Certainly remember mentioning that he could get disqualified Lawrence at any point. I think Marcus McDonnell, the referee, warned him so many times. I watched it back on Sunday, and by about round 7-8, I thought he should have disqualified. You can go back to 25 odd years ago when Lennox Lewis fought Henry Akinwande. You were probably barely around then.
I wasn't even alive then.
The great Mills Lane. No, exactly. The great Mills Lane disqualified Akinwande for not fighting after 5 rounds in that heavyweight world title fight. So you've got to look at these things. Lawrence has got to look at his hit and hold style. I mean, he wasn't even hitting at some points. He was literally coming in and holding. 2 points deducted for that. 3 knockdowns. A couple of them a little bit dubious, but the right man won. Look, his stock really fell. He lost the world title. He was deeply criticised by many fans over his tactics and his style. And maybe it's a style he's got away with for a long time and a style he perhaps needs to change.
Yeah, I was going to say, you just said there, I watched the fight back, and I think you said on TalkSport, you said you were sort of screaming at your TV when you saw the amount of holding from Lawrence Okolie. I think I agree, but when you sort of look it back, I was at the arena, I was at the stadium, and it's hard to see them. But when you look at it back, sometimes it was just like I saw a man that just was unwilling to engage. It was really, really weird tactics.
It wasn't boxing. It wasn't boxing.
100%. And when you look at it now, you look at someone like Chris Billam-Smith, who's become a world champion. You look at all the achievements that Shane McGuigans achieved in the game. Where do you think this one ranks from all the fighters and all the world champions that he's created?
I think his work with George Groves was phenomenal. I think, this is a really big one because Chris has really grown under Shane. He's grown into a great fighter. Lawrence Okolie, with his awkward style, should have been a world beater and very difficult to fight in the division. But he's exposed something about Lawrence in terms of that style that might get picked up by other referees now. He kept to his game plan. It's a massive achievement. It ranks up with the very highest achievements. And also, it's a very romantic story. First world champion there since Freddie Mills. CBS revealing that his mum's had cancer recently. It was an amazing story, and it was a gentleman fighter. Obviously, he's known as the Gentleman, and it's a phenomenal story. It's one that resonates very deeply. But Shane's been successful with a lot of fighters. You can say that his time working with people like David Haye and all these guys, he's a very, very sound trainer from a family that deeply understands boxing. And I think he's only getting started. Yeah. I think Shane's in his early 30s now.
35, yeah.
He's not 30. Is he 35 now?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, he's literally just got started, in my view. And he's got a long way to go, and I can see a lot of boxers going to him.
Definitely. And when you look at Okolie now, after the performance, you look at the David Light fight, even the Cieslak fight, do you feel like now he could create a stigma, especially when it comes to referees, where before the fight's even started, they know what they're going to expect of Lawrence Okolie, and he could even be under harsher punishment from referees, where they're going to be as clinical as they can to stop him from all this holding and stuff.
Yeah, well, I think what's happened, obviously 2 points disqualified, 2 points deducted, wasn't disqualified, multiple warnings. When he does that in his next fight, that's been exposed now by the referee. I do think it sets a precedent. And I can imagine he's going to get penalised by other referees, and they're not going to let him hold. It's obviously something he does psychologically. He's got this huge wingspan. He's been able to jab and hold in the past. I mean, under Shane McGuigan, to be fair to Shane and Okolie, they really worked on his jab, squatting lower, working on his jab, more movement. So it's going to be interesting to see what Sugar Hill Stewart does with Lawrence Okolie now, because this is his fourth trainer, I think, in 19 fights. Yeah. So he's going to have to do something. Will he be able to do it? Now he's in his 30s? We don't know yet.
Do you think it's a move up to heavyweight, or do you think he'd go for the rematch?
No, I think there's a rematch there. It wouldn't surprise me if Richard Riakporhe fought Chris Billam-Smith next, if they didn't want to do this fight straight away. But something's got to change in the second fight. And I think what it's got to rely on is Okolie's got to work on his footwork, really work hard on his footwork, use the entire ring, and not do these kind of attacks where he throws bunches of punches and pushes his opponent into a corner and tries to finish them, and then grapples and leans. Something's got to change. You just don't know whether he's going to be able to do it yet. He will probably want the rematch clause next. He's a proud fighter. But as I say, it wouldn't surprise me if they put Richard Riakporhe in with Billam-Smith next. And then had Okolie fight the winner.
Absolutely. Well, we'll move on to stuff stateside. We saw the face-off that you were sort of involved in between Josh Taylor and Teofimo Lopez. We'll first touch on that. Josh Taylor wasn't having any of it. We saw an early walkout. This just sort of spices up for what's going to come next week, where they're going to clash heads with each other, and obviously you'll be there to see all of that.
Yeah, I mean, I've got the honour and privilege of working over there next week, but I had the honour and privilege of doing that show, Trash Talk, as well. It was an early walkout, but we must have been filming for about 80 minutes by then, and it had reached fever pitch. We filmed obviously up with Joe McNally and Josh up in the gym in Liverpool, Rotunda ABC. We filmed that day. It's a few weeks ago now. We had the link up with Teofimo Lopez and his strength and conditioning guy. His dad wasn't there. Josh's dad was in the background in the gym that day. We had a big crew. We had this link up, and they really don't like each other. There's so much fire there. They both have a kind of good arrogance, if you like, towards their opponents. They're both very, very fiery. In fact, at one point, Teo started slagging me off. I was just trying to prick him a little bit, just poke him a little bit, poke the bear, and he went off at me. But no, it's going to be very, very incendiary next week when those two guys. Obviously, they're not staying in the same hotel in New York. They've got them in separate hotels. It's a fantastic fight as well because both of them have got something to prove coming off kind of recent performances. Sandor Martin for Teo, the Jack Catterall win that, almost universally people felt he lost that night. So much to prove, a long time out of the ring for Josh. Has he still got it at 140 pounds? Is the weight an issue? He seems very happy with Joe McNally after moving obviously away from a great period with Ben Davison. So it's set up for a real barnstormer. And I think we've got. So I spoke to Xander Zayas last night on Zoom, who's the 15-0 light middleweight, the Puerto Rican, who's 10 knockouts, 15-0. Fantastic prospect he is. It's going to be a great night in the Hulu Theatre.
Definitely. And I was going to say that, literally just touched on it there. The big thing about this fight is either of them have got something to prove. Josh Taylor, after the Catterall fight, Teofimo Lopez, very sort of last few fights disappointing. But, I think that's the great thing about the fight, where they've both got so much to prove. Obviously, Taylor's sort of lost all his titles now. He's not undisputed anymore. When you have those two who have so much to who've got so much pressure on them, that then creates for a good fight, as you said there.
Yeah, and I think the styles make for fights as well. Josh likes to engage, and he's very much he can be a phone box fighter, or he can be a technical fighter as well. But he's a very tough Scotsman with balls of steel, isn't he? And that that rise through the World Boxing Super Series, winning the undisputed title against Jose Ramirez in Las Vegas during lockdown, losing the belts because of that scenario with Catterall where they were going to fight again, then they were. I still want to see that fight with Jack Catterall. 100%. Obviously, got the win at the weekend, didn't he? And it's good that he's fought again. It's just a terrific fight. It could go either way, in my view. Teo's going to bring it. I think he brings a lot of power. I think he was a very big lightweight anyway. Yeah. He's not a small super lightweight or light welterweight, as I would call it. So stylistically, it's made for a terrific fight. I could see either man winning it. It's a genuine 50-50 for me. And I think it's going to be a very partisan atmosphere in there as well. A lot of people I've noticed since that clip went out where, there's also another interview that Teo's given. He said he wants to kill Josh.
Crazy stuff.
Really crazy stuff. He was pretty crazy. Wait till you see the full half an hour trash talk program when it's edited down. They don't hold back, either of them. They genuinely don't like each other. I almost had to restrain them from going up to the camera. Do you remember that moment when Big John wanted to go up to the screen and get hold of Jake Paul, even though he was on a screen? It was a bit like that at times. It's a real pick'em. It's a real pick'em. I mean, I think Josh Taylor wins it on points, given what he's done with his pedigree. He was in those top 10 pound for pound rankings just before the Catterall fight. I don't think he's in them anymore.
No.
But he's got an extraordinary resume, undefeated still, of course. So there's loads for Teo to aim at. I think it's genuinely going to be an unhinged fight week build-up.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you look at sort of 140 away from this fight, I feel like it's probably becoming one of the most stacked divisions in the world of boxing, especially on the world level. You've got the 4 champions. Not only that, we could potentially have Devin Haney joining that division, Jack Catterall there. So this is just an example of so many good fights that could be made at that weight class, especially even after this, whoever wins.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the list now.
Okay.
Jose Ramirez is still there, of course. As you say, Jack Catterall needs to prove things. Ryan Garcia is coming up to that weight division, which is a lot of fun as well, isn't it? Regis Prograis still around. A brilliant fighter.
He's sort of in line for a world title.
Yeah, so it's a very, very exciting division in many, many ways. Probably not as exciting as lightweight, the division below. But like you say, Haney could come up to that division very soon. Even though, while we're on it, I'd like to see him rematch Vasily Lomachenko, in my view. I'd just love to see the rematch.
100%. And another thing we were sort of talking about just before we sort of started recording was the fact that we've got so many sort of Brits fighting over in America in big fights. We've got Josh Taylor, Callum Smith fighting Artur Beterbiev. it's interesting, isn't it, when we see so many Brits that are sort of flying over and fighting these Americans, where especially this year we've seen it loads, especially on Maxi Hughes as well.
Yeah, I think we've got, if you look at women's boxing, we've got one big fight in the UK with Savannah Marshall challenging HH Diva Franchon Cruz de Zern
Yeah.
for all the super middleweight belts. That's a big fight. I think that's up in Manchester. You know, to give the women their due. But like you say, Callum Smith going to Quebec City to challenge Artur Beterbiev in a brilliant fight.
Yeah.
I think some lumps were taken out of Beterbiev in the yard fight. Which gives Smith a big opportunity. Again, that's a pick'em. No one has really been able to break Beterbiev apart. Great boxer, technical stand-up Eastern European fighter, brilliant chin, and equalising power in both hands, even late in a fight, and an amazing engine. That's set up for an amazing fight. As you say, Josh Taylor fighting over there next week. Daniel Dubois going to Poland to challenge Alexander Usyk for 3 of those world heavyweight title belts. So, and obviously there are some very good fights. Josh Kelly and others are obviously headlining in the next couple of months. But really, what were marquee fights, we haven't got them in the UK at the moment. And I know you're going to bring me onto it.
Yeah.
The key is the heavyweights, Lewis.
100%. 100%. Absolutely. And you said we're going to sort of bring onto it now. Well, we've sort of got to talk about it, where this is every single year we seem to get it of Fury AJ negotiations, and this time it's all closed down again. I don't know how you felt about it. I mean, I wasn't really buying it the first time. I was pretty sure AJ's looking at a Deontay Wilder fight, but you know, it's still, if we do see that fight, it's still that the key is still that we aren't seeing the heavyweights fight each other, which is still an annoying thing. If we don't see Fury Usyk this year, it's still so disappointing, as you said, and it's just frustrating to see where the key is that we want to see the heavyweights fighting each other, as you said.
Look, if you go back to April the 1st was AJ and Franklin. April 15th was Joe Joyce and Zhili Zhang. And April the 29th could have been the undisputed heavyweight title at Wembley Stadium. It would have been one of the greatest heavyweight months we've ever 100%. Had in this country. So since then, the breakdown in talks with Tyson Fury and Alexander Usyk, and that not happening, for whatever reason you want to give it in the end, the timing wasn't right for both men, in my view. You rightly go back. I've worked backwards. Rightly go back to last year. You know, there was an offer thrown out there, rather like this one, for AJ and Tyson Fury to fight last December. It wasn't going to happen. Completely get the thinking of Eddie Hearn and 258 management. There was no point putting AJ in with Tyson Fury at short notice just then. He wants time to work with Derek James. What we need are the announcement of 2 big heavyweight fights in August and July, which we were supposed to be getting. Tyson Fury fighting someone and Anthony Joshua fighting someone. Doesn't matter about the rest. Keep Usyk for now. Keep Wilder for now. We know they're all talking to the Saudis about November, potentially December fights. 2 big heavyweight fights over there. I got a voice message from Eddie Hearn a couple of days ago. I spoke to George Warren yesterday morning. Obviously, Frank Warren's been out and spoken publicly since then. Tyson Fury wants to fight in the UK next. Eddie Hearn's made it obvious that he's trying to get Dillian Whyte and Anthony Joshua over the line for August the 12th at the O2 Arena. Yeah. Big fight. If that gets announced, everything starts to fall into place. Tyson Fury needs to fight a Flip Hrgovic, an Andy Ruiz, a Frank Sanchez. Any of those guys are fine. Zhili Zhang would have been perfect.
Yeah,
but where's the Joyce Zhang fight being organised? Why didn't they get the Zhili Zhang fight? It would have been perfect for Fury. So it's all... I've said this several times. Opponent for Fury. Andy Ruiz, Frank Sanchez, Jared Anderson even. He's probably not ready. They probably wouldn't throw him in with him. But, you know, Zhili Zhang would have been perfect in my view. But in many ways, the key is if they announce Eddie Hearn doesn't sound certain to me that it's going to be Dillian Whyte, by the way. He's saying he wants Dillian Whyte, but doesn't sound certain about it. But clearly he wants this Wilder fight with Joshua in Saudi Arabia, where the money's supposed to be big. Frank Warren's come out and said we've had talks with Saudi, but no genuine offer. And there was talk about 90 million US dollars available for him in Saudi Arabia at the end of the year. Fury and Usyk is a massive fight. I think it should take place in the UK, in my view. But will we see it? Who knows? Will we ever see Fury and Anthony Joshua? Who knows?
Is there a sort of worry with Tyson Fury, especially at the summer, that we're running out of time? Fans weren't happy from his last fight with Derek Chisora. They wanted to see, a more credible opponent in there. Are we worried that the fans' sort of patience has run out with Tyson Fury, where he needs to get a good opponent? The Zhang fight, obviously, that was I thought that was perfect. I would have been happy with that. He's now enticed to a rematch with Joe Joyce, Andy Ruiz. I don't know really what's going on with that. Also, Filip Hrgović is
apparently asked too much money.
Yeah. So is there a way where the public sort of patience is wearing a thing with Tyson Fury, where we need to get a credible, Frank Warren needs to get a credible opponent for Fury for his next fight, or, he's slowly sort of sliding down the slope and losing fans as he sort of, the more Instagram videos that come out and this and that?
Yeah, I think he is. I think it's just losing favour. People, the 10-80-10 rule, 10% love you all the time, 10% hate you, and the 80 swing with the times. And it's, there's no doubt that he has lost traction. Certainly if you listen to the echo chamber that social media is, there's a lot of complaining and moaning going on. But let's be honest, they sold 70,000 seats for him to fight, or 60,000 seats for him to fight in December against Derek Chisora at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. They're not going to have problems filling out a stadium for Tyson Fury. He's a massive mainstream crossover star. There's a Netflix series about to come out, 7 parts on his life. I mean, luckily for me, again, an honour, I got to do some inlines for that, some narration for that. It's going to be very funny. He's a big star, but it all comes down at this stage to how the promoters manage the financial expectations of their fighters, the egos, and the timing of it all. And at the moment, there's stalemate on the chessboard. Hopefully, and it's felt like that for several weeks now. It felt like that. We're all fed up of running around the houses all the time and things collapsing, and it's happened too much. These things do take time. These big fights these big organisations coming together, big events being made, takes time to happen. And it's like you say, we need a credible opponent for Tyson Fury for the summer. It's as simple as that. He wants to fight. That's why Usyk wasn't available for the summer. Obviously, because he's got his defenders mandatory against Daniel Dubois. They've thrown it out there. What about Anthony Joshua again? They don't fancy derailing their plans at the moment that they've got. And obviously, if he loses to Fury, it's an endgame fight for him in lots of ways. Maybe the Wilder fight is an endgame fight for Anthony Joshua as well. It's a very tough fight. That's a pick'em as well. But I think Wilder is a very dangerous fighter for Joshua to go in with.
100%. And sort of just saying there about the heavyweights, August 12th was also a date proposed for AJ versus Dillian Whyte, the same day as Alexander Usyk versus Daniel Dubois. As we were saying sort of at the start of this interview, is it disappointing again to see that we got in 2 big heavyweight fights on the same night?
Well, it's the night they've obviously managed to get the O2 Arena, but I don't understand their thinking. Is it promotional play? Is it rivalries? It does not help the scenario for the heavyweight division. Do it on a different weekend. It's pointless,
Do you think it might be as a play where, people are saying, people always make, Eddie Hearn and sort of Fury and Frank Warren always make claims about Usyk that he's only a big draw where he's got AJ fighting him or Fury fighting him. Do you think that it might have been a play in that way to show that, or if we want to put AJ on the same night, let's look who takes the headlines? Would it be AJ or Usyk?
Potentially, but over in Poland, many Ukrainians, of course, have left Ukraine and moved to Poland due to the war there, due to the invasion of Russia by Russia. They're not going to have problems getting a big draw for him over there. No problem at all. And it, I think Usyk could fight in the UK and fill out the O2 Arena. He's very popular, I think. I mean, I think his popularity has grown. I think his popularity grew through that whole negotiational scenario with Tyson Fury. And again, there's two, for me, here's the key. There's two fights Tyson Fury needs to have, and it's Alexander Usyk and Anthony Joshua. There's two fights Anthony Joshua needs to have: Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder. And maybe Joshua and Joyce as well. I think that's a big fight. So, you know, all these fights need to be made. Joe Joyce and Deontay Wilder's a big fight as well. All these fights could be made. It's whether they will be. It's as simple as that.
And just the last sort of question from me, a last talking point I wanted to sort of speak to you about. We're talking about fights that have aged and fights that we're waiting for ages for. On sort of July 29th, there's no more waiting. Errol Spence will fight Terence Crawford for the undisputed welterweight crown. Some fights age fine. This is one that's aged so well, and it's created a big fight as possible. And obviously, it's one that me and you as fans were both really looking forward to.
Yeah, absolutely. Errol Spence, Terence Crawford, Terence Crawford, Errol Spence. Who goes first on the poster? Yeah. Both undefeated. Errol, the true welterweight. Obviously, Terence, I've been covering since he started at lightweight. I remember being at his fight when I first met him when he beat Ricky Burns up in Scotland many years ago. He's come up 3 weight divisions. I favour Crawford to win this fight. But it wouldn't surprise me if it's a split draw or a majority draw. I remember doing a grid for Thomas Hauser for Ring Magazine. I think it was for Ring Magazine a few years back, when Sean Porter, Keith Thurman, Danny Garcia, even was Mikey Garcia moving up there? No, he was probably still down at lightweight. But we were looking at, there were 6 or 7 guys in that division. And it came down to who was the best in that division. It was the division in boxing at the time. And I remember not being able to pick between Errol Spence and Terence Crawford. It's still very difficult. It's a real
100%.
pick.
It's really, really
it's a
hard.
49-51, and I'm 51 on Crawford. I just think he's got more adaptability, but it's a tremendous fight. The sad thing about this is it could have happened 3 years ago, 4 years ago, before COVID struck. And they could be having their trilogy fight now and be indelibly linked as massive names together forever. Ali, Frazier, Wilder, Fury, Barrera, Morales. You know, it could be have been a trilogy of fights already that made them, because it is a massive fight inside the sport, but it's not a massive mainstream crossover fight, because they are not, in the crowded landscape of American sports, they are not big stars. And I've raised this with Terence before. They are huge stars in our firmament. They are so talented, and it will do big numbers in terms of a boxing crowd. But it isn't Mayweather and Pacquiao. It's the equivalent of that weight, but it isn't Mayweather and Pacquiao in terms of fame and crossover appeal.
Yeah, well, I think that I done an interview with Dan Raphael last week, and he said that they've obliged to have a obviously depending on how the first fight goes, they're obliged to have a rematch before the end of the year. So that's a positive thing, that we could
absolutely
see this fight not once but twice, which is great for the fans.
Well, as I said earlier, many people upset that Vasyl Lomachenko didn't get the decision against Devin Haney. I thought Devin Haney won it 115, 113. It was a very close fight. Lomachenko came on very strong at the end of the fight with some very eye-catching moves. This fight may go very quickly as well. And we may be looking at, 12 rounds where we can't split them. They both got extraordinary styles. One's a southpaw. Terence can switch hit. A lot's happened in these guys' lives, and they should be mainstream stars, because they both got incredible stories to tell. I think the fight will really build in fight week, Lewis, and I think, as I say, we may need 24 rounds to sort it out. We may even need 36. Let's hope so. And let's hope that's what they do for the next 12 months of their lives.
Absolutely. Sort of just last one for me. Are you I heard a new show coming to Boxing Social, Fight Club, that you'll be sort of hosting. Are you looking forward to doing that? And what can we expect from that sort of video?
There are rumours that the Fight Club with Gareth A Davies may be starting up in a couple of weeks' time, in a red hot lit studio. With guests from all over the world, video screen link-ups. Yeah, it's a privilege to have been asked to host that show. I'm looking forward to it. I'll put my all into it. Look out for it. We're going to have all the big guests, and they might have you doing a few cameos
Oh,
as well.
oh mate, I'd
Um,
love that.
yeah, we can have your little video cameo of the week. Your video selfie. All right, I'm going to set you a task.
Okay, yeah.
I'm set all of you a task. Your video selfie with your boxer of the week to get on the
Perfect.
show, and
Perfect.
I'll send you the question for them
Okay.
on WhatsApp when we've done this. I'll have a think
Mhm.
about it.
Perfect,
Where are
Gareth.
you next week?
I am next week. I will be at Sunny Edwards. I'll be at Sunny Edwards next week, and then the week after that, I'm at Adam Azim, and then I've got a nice week. I've got a holiday in Zante with the lads, so I have a nice sort of break
A
there.
holiday in Zante with the lads. Okay,
Yeah,
behave.
yeah. Hopefully, see you soon, though, Gareth. Thank you
I'll
for
see you
taking the
at Adam
time.
and Zim week. I'll
Yeah,
see you at Adam and Zim week. Yeah,
perfect. I'll see you then. Thank you for taking the time, mate. Really appreciate it.
absolute
Thank you.
pleasure. Anytime.